How's it going, everybody, and welcome back to another rendition of Hot Takes with Holmes here on Radio Free Radford. My name is Blake Holmes, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Isaiah Addair. Stick around with us, as today we're going to be talking about the recent action around the NFL, NCAA, and the MLB postseason. But first, if you like what you hear on Radio Free Radford, be sure to follow the social media pages. The Twitter is at Radio Free Raddy, Instagram Radio Free Radford, Facebook is Radio Free Radford. Be sure to follow, like, subscribe to those social media pages to find out more about the great content that goes up on this online station daily and every week. So, to start off, like we always do here on Hot Takes with Holmes, I want to talk about the National Football League, and I want to ask a question. Yesterday, the Miami Dolphins bounced back after a loss to the Cincinnati Bengals with a big win over the Chicago Bears. A game, actually, I believe we both picked the Bears to win, and they were led by none other than Brock Osweiler, as Ryan Tannehill was out of this game. So my question, is Miami better with Brock, or do they need to get back to Ryan Tannehill, or was this just a fluke game, or was this the revenge game for Brock Osweiler?
It was the definition of a fluke. We've all seen what happens when you buy into Brock. You're disappointed, and you lose a ton of money. That about sums it up. I like Tannehill, though. Might be biased.
Definitely is a little bit of a one-time thing, I think. I don't think Brock is going to be, especially, but it was impressive for him. He did throw a couple of picks, but him to do what he did against that defense, the Bears defense, it was still impressive. However, I do agree that they will go back to Tannehill. I just thought that'd be a funny question to ask. So, another big thing that happened in the past week, and I have nothing but respect for him, is Drew Brees becoming the all-time passing yards leader in a career in the NFL. It seems like Drew Brees is always getting overlooked as one of the better quarterbacks of our generation. I think the only reason that is because of postseason. He only has the one Super Bowl, and to be fair, he has had a few teams to where he was literally just throwing the ball up in a 7-9 season, and maybe that's where some of the stats are coming out from. But nevertheless, it's still a very impressive feat, beating greats like Peyton Manning, Brett Favre. He's got Tom Brady right now, of course, and beating several greats by doing that. So, Isaiah, where does Drew Brees really stand in your top quarterbacks of all time list?
Blake, if you remember our junior year of high school, we did a bracket with some funny names. We threw Tim Tebow in there. We threw Phil Robertson from Duck Dynasty in there. But we were trying to find out who was the greatest quarterback of all time. And aside from some of the obscure names on the list, we had, I think, 32 quarterbacks on the list. And we narrowed it down to who we thought was the best. And I chose Drew Brees then. Since then, there's been a 4,900-yard year, a 5,000-yard year. Then last year was super efficient. And then this year is even more efficient. So I've got to say that Drew Brees, and Tom Brady's done a lot since then, but I still think from pure talent-wise and an intellectual standpoint, Drew Brees, I have to give it to him.
I do think that Tom Brady is the best quarterback of all time. I know when you look at stats don't lie, but also rings and and rings is a team thing. I understand that completely as well. But postseason success doesn't lie as well. There isn't really been the only person you could argue has been more clutch in their postseason career was Joe Montana. But think about it this way, Brady and the struggles that he's had ever in the postseason, it hasn't necessarily been him. It's been his defense, whether it be the Baltimore Ravens beating them back in, I believe it was 2012. It was their defense that faltered at home against that Baltimore team. Last year in the playoffs, the defense let Nick Foles throw over 300 yards on them. Like, there's just a lot of the things that has caused Tom Brady to not win has not been solely because of him. If you look at it, last year, he loses the Super Bowl. He breaks his own record for most passing yards in the Super Bowl. It's still impressive. As postseason success goes, as much as I don't like the guy, don't get me wrong, I do not like Tom Brady as a football player, but I respect him to no end as a football player. And you see the postseason success he has, I can't put that behind him. Now, that being said, I do believe that he does rival with Peyton Manning. As much as I like Peyton Manning, and I loved the congratulatory clip he did put out on social media for Drew Brees, but as far as I like Peyton Manning, both quarterbacks seem to have similar postseason success, but look at the stats edge, you got to give it to Drew Brees. So I think he does absolutely rival with Peyton Manning, but I do think that Tom Brady is really the greatest quarterback of all time. The last thing before we get into our game predictions, our favorite thing to do here on Hot Takes with Holmes, our midseason surprises. So basically, any team that you may think that is underachieving, overachieving to this point, who has really surprised you so far into not being what you expected them to be?
Wow, the Oakland Raiders. Okay, Chucky's back. John Gruden's been back now for 6 weeks. Derek Carr has had times where he looked like he's returning to that MVP-esque form. It just hasn't happened. They got Jordy Nelson. They picked up Martavis Bryant. Marshawn Lynch was looking thinner and leaner in preseason. He hasn't done much this year so far. And that defense, they traded Khalil Mack. I don't even know what Gruden was thinking there. But yeah, definitely. I would say that my biggest letdown of the year and biggest surprise is the Raiders. Just because they're slacking. And John Gruden should have them in a better position than just a one-win team.
I do agree with you. I think trading Khalil Mack had a major deal with that, obviously. But my main team, I'm a bit surprised with, honestly, the Philadelphia Eagles. Sitting here at 500, 3-3. I didn't expect them to be this point. Getting beat by a team. I'm also surprised by the Tennessee Titans. That was a game I expected them to win. But put it this way, the defending Super Bowl champions who didn't change much, I didn't expect them to be sitting here at 500. Granted, they started out the season without Carson Wentz. However, this is the same Nick Foles that led you through the playoffs last year. If you want to use Nick Foles as an argument for we won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles, then he needs to prove himself in the regular season as well. He's done that in the past, didn't quite do that this year. They started off the season with an impressive win against the Falcons, but they're 1-5. No, they're 2-4 as they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers yesterday. They lose to the Buccaneers, who are also 2-4. They beat the struggling Indianapolis Colts, and they beat the Giants Thursday night. That's the only wins they have so far. They've lost to the Buccaneers, Titans, and Vikings. Two proven teams so far, and they haven't beaten either of them. They got a big test this week as well, going up against the Carolina Panthers. So this is going to be their time to really prove themselves. But again, I really thought that Philadelphia would be better than they are right now. So moving on to one of our favorite things to do here on the show, it's our week-by-week predictions. So Isaiah, I want to start off with Thursday night, the Denver Broncos traveling to Glendale to take on the Arizona Cardinals. Two teams that are struggling a little bit. Broncos started off the season pretty well at 2-0, and they've lost 4 straight. So, Case Keenum versus the young buck and Josh Rosen. Who you got?
Okay, so I'm going to try to be as unbiased in this as I can, just because, of course, I'm a Cardinal fan, like I've mentioned multiple times before. I don't think I've picked Arizona for a win this year. But I think, being 1-5, I think this is the time that they get a win. I do think they win this week, and I think it'll be a relatively low-scoring game. But the Cardinals have 2 defensive touchdowns the past 2 weeks, 7 forced turnovers. If Mike McCoy's fired, offensive coordinator for Arizona, I look for Arizona to take it with the ease, or not with the ease, but more likely to take it. But I'm going to go Arizona just because they have a lot of experience against Keenum. They still have Patrick Peterson, who might be on the trade block, interestingly enough. So he's going to want to prove himself even more, and that defense is just stellar. So I'm going Arizona with that.
Normally, I'd have to say Denver because their defense typically, a lot of times in most games, seems to have an edge, especially in the recent history. However, recently, the Broncos have been getting shredded left and right. Now, to be fair, last game was against the undefeated Los Angeles Rams. However, the game before that was to the New York Jets, and Isaiah Correll ran for over 200 yards on them. That's not the Denver defense that we've been used to. That's not Von Miller, Chris Harris Jr., and Bradley Roby has been struggling as the number 2 corner this year. They're definitely missing Aqib Talib, and really, the Broncos just don't look that, and plus Case Keenum has not looked great so far. It blows my mind. I saw a stat the other day that he's so effective in the play action, and they don't run play action ever. And so it kind of blew my mind as you have a quarterback that's built for play action, and you're not doing it. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I think if they use play action and they mix the variety of plays pretty well, they do win this game. But if I'm going off of what I've seen the past few weeks, give me Arizona. At 9:30 in London on Sunday morning, the Tennessee Titans will take on the Los Angeles Chargers. Again, the Chargers actually climbing back from that hole they started in. They're 4-2 right now against a 500 Tennessee Titans team who just took a beating from Baltimore yesterday. And London, this is always, and there's no home. Of course, there's no home team. There's no real edge here when it comes to location. It's just you're in London, and nobody knows what's going to happen in London games. So, I'll be honest. I never know who's going to win, but I'll take the safe bet here. I'm going to take the Chargers after the drumming they just gave to Cleveland this past week.
I'm going to oppose you here just because if you look at the Titans losing to the Ravens, they got demolished, right? But for one, the Chargers don't have the Ravens defense. The Ravens have a good secondary. Not only that, Mariota only threw 15 passes all game. Only threw 15 passes, completed 75% of them, but only threw 15 passes. And for me, it's bad play calling when just a couple weeks ago, he shredded a team. 350 passing yards, 3 touchdowns. But 2 weeks later, he's going to throw 15 passes. If the play calling is smarter and they utilize the holes in the defense, which pretty much is don't throw toward Casey Hayward, but there's a whole other half the field you can throw to. If they do that, then I think they can win. So I'm going to go with the Titans.
I do think that there is an issue with the offensive play calling because, for example, I was watching the game, part of it the other day, yesterday, and there was a point right at halftime. The Titans had the ball, or I couldn't remember exactly what the point was, but it was a 3rd and 10, and the time was running out, and they chose to run the ball. They chose to just run a simple handoff, and obviously you could just tell by the head coach Mike Vrabel's reaction. He just said, "Really? You're not going to let us," because obviously he's not the one calling the plays. This is the offensive coordinator calling the plays, and you could just tell that why would you not even give us a chance when we're down 14-0 at this point? So I do think there is an issue with play calling, and I do agree that if the Titans can figure that out, they could be in a better spot. But like I said, I'm going to take the safe bet, and I'm going to take the Chargers coming off of a momentum shift in their season. The New England Patriots, now 4-2, taking on the Chicago Bears in Chicago. I picked the Patriots last week to win in a thriller against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they did just that last night. Give me the Patriots again to put the Bears back to 500 this week, and I think Tom Brady has a field day against a very good Chicago Bears defense.
I'm going to go the Bears. I don't mean to intentionally pick against New England. I'm just not bought in right now. They're at 4-2, yes. But I'm just not bought in at this very moment, especially being tied with the Dolphins. Well, having the tiebreaker over the Dolphins for first place. The Bears' defense is the best that they played against all year. Khalil Mack will not be silent for 2 straight weeks. That defense, the secondary especially, will not be silent for 2 straight weeks. Especially, I think, almost every position on the Patriots' offense, with the exception of Tom Brady and maybe Josh Gordon, the Bears have an upper hand. And if you have a safety over the top on Gordon, then he's not going to be able to play that efficiently either. So I have to go with the Bears, and it's in Soldier Field. So the combination of those factors is why I have to go Chicago.
In a game that you expect not as many viewers are going to be tuned into this one, the Buffalo Bills taking on the Indianapolis Colts in Lucas Oil Stadium. Both teams are very under 500. With the Bills being the best record at 2-4, and really this is just a game that is going to be low scoring, I think. However, especially if Buffalo has lost Josh Allen, who did go out with an injury yesterday, and I was laughing at a tweet. By the way, if you guys ever want a Twitter account to follow, there is an ESPN analyst named Mina Combs. She is funny, really funny on Twitter. I'd suggest giving her a follow. There was a point where I saw a tweet and it said, I had this weird chill in my body when I just knew that Nathan Peterman had thrown a touchdown. She was actually referring to a pick 6 that he threw. So that's what that's just one example. And really, I think that's going to go into it. Like I said, I don't think Nathan Peterman's that good. I don't have much hope for him, but I like the Colts in this game at home against the struggling Buffalo Bills. So give me Indianapolis to win this game.
Finally, we agree. I have to go with the Colts as well, especially even if Josh Allen was playing, it'd be an interesting game. But if Nathan Peterman's in, the Colts will end up with their second win. and maybe even a momentum swing going into their Week 8 game. So yeah, you summed it up. If Peterman throws a touchdown, it'll probably be a pick six, unless it's not him in the uniform. I'm just gonna say that.
The Detroit Lions taking on the Miami Dolphins in Miami. Detroit has been a weird team this year, to say the least. They had a bye week last week, but they've been very impressive or they've been very not impressive. And there's not really been an in-between. With wins against teams like the Patriots this year and then with bad losses on their record as well, they're taking on a Dolphins team who has been proven so far. Tannehill, of course, we'll have to see if he comes back, and maybe Brock Osweiler again. But I like the Dolphins at home here. I think this is the type of game that Matthew Stafford seems to win for whatever reason. But I'm going to take the safe bet at home, especially if Ryan Tannehill comes back, and give me the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you there, especially if Tannehill does come back. The three-headed monster in the backfield. We see Devontae Parker, starting to make some plays. Kenny Stills and Albert Wilson have been playmaking all year, and even last year were. And I still think that Dolphins defense is underrated. And if Brock Osweiler is playing for the Dolphins, I think Stafford will, without a shadow of a doubt, have an upper hand, and it will be a challenging game for Miami if they're going to pull off the win. But if Tannehill's playing, I don't think it'll be close, but I don't think it'll be. The odds will not be in Detroit's favor at all.
The Minnesota Vikings taking on the New York Jets in New Jersey. The Jets have seemed to show some traction here. They've won 2 straight, got back to 500. Sam Darnold starting to settle in through only 6 incomplete passes. Just I believe he went 24 for 30. So an impressive completion percentage there. And the Minnesota Vikings sitting at a winning record, 3-2-1. Who would have thought that we'd see 2 teams at 3-2-1 in Week 6 already? And really, the Vikings going on the road to New Jersey. This could be a huge game for the Jets and the Minnesota Vikings, both respectively. And honestly, this is my upset of the week. I'm picking the New York Jets to continue that momentum wave, to keep winning, win their third straight game, especially at home, making a statement against a very talented Vikings defense.
For once again, unintentionally, I have to side with you here. The Jets, they have Bilal Powell and Isaiah Crowell in the backfield. Crowell a couple weeks ago got 200 some yards. Bilal Powell's change of pace back, really effective. Robbie Anderson's underrated in the receiving game, and the Jets defense is just not terrible. And we've seen that Kirk Cousins and the Vikings usually play up or down to their opponents. Arizona should have had the game this past week. Terrible play calling, not using David Johnson or Larry Fitzgerald is the reason the Cardinals lost in the end. And I think that the Vikings will play down to the Jets, and the Jets will come out victorious and be in the thick. Who would have thought this? Be in the thick of the race to win their divisional crown.
The Carolina Panthers taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. Again, the Panthers sitting at 3-2 and the Eagles sitting at 3-3. This is a big game for both teams. The Panthers just coming off of a loss last week to the Washington Redskins, and the Philadelphia Eagles coming off of a win against the New York Giants. So, Carolina traveling to Philadelphia. I will go ahead and say this. The Carolina Panthers, if they're, for whatever reason, when you say, like you mentioned that Vikings seem to play up and down to their competition, I think the Panthers are a perfect example of that. Because we go through and really, like I said, most games they play in are close, and Cam Newton has been off the past few weeks. I think they get a win here in Philadelphia. They get Christian McCaffrey involved, and Philadelphia continues to search for something, and they slip in the NFC East race. It's not over. Dallas has looked suspect at times. Washington is still leading it, I believe, right now at 4-2. So it's not over, but I think Philadelphia leaves this game kind of wondering what is going on, and I like the Panthers to win this game in Philadelphia.
No, I disagree. Philly takes the dub, and I do think it'll be a shootout. I think it'll be a shootout for sure, but Carson Wentz has quietly been more efficient and a better quarterback than he was last year, and last year was an MVP season. We just don't see it because he missed the first 2 games, so his numbers are deflated a little bit. No pun intended. Just beating the Patriots in the Super Bowl and everything. His numbers are deflated though, and he is being super efficient. Jay Ajayi may be hurt, but Smallwood and Clement are doing phenomenal in his absence, especially it being in Philly. So give me Philadelphia.
The Cleveland Browns traveling to Tampa to take on the Buccaneers. I'll put it this way. If the Cleveland Browns want fans to think that their team is back and they're going to be fighting for a playoff spot this year and in years to come, they got to win this game. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a struggling NFC South team right now. Started off 2-0, they've dropped 3 straight, and those 3 games that they've dropped have not really been close either. And one of those games was to a 1-4 Atlanta Falcons team who was really struggling, coming off of a drumming in the week before. So I like the Browns to win this game, even on the road in Tampa, because like I said, if this is a game, if you want us to take your team seriously and look for your team in the future anymore, then you got to win this game against Tampa.
Okay, question first. If Al Davis, the former owner for the Raiders, is still alive, who would his favorite quarterback in the NFL be? I've got to say Baker Mayfield, because he just wins, and that's what Al Davis is all about. And yeah, the record doesn't reflect it, but his record is 2-2 as he's gotten more playing time in the NFL. He just won all through college, no matter which team he was on. So I've got to go Cleveland. And they also have an underrated defense, but Baker just wins at every level, and I think he wins this week to put him back in the thick of their divisional race as well.
I don't even think it's worth saying he just wins. I think it's also just saying he makes the team competitive. Because if you look, they're competing in games. They didn't do that last year. It was a lot. Last week they did get blown out by the Los Angeles Chargers. But really, with Baker at the helm, it's the first time that's happened in 4 games. Like I said, this was not a team that competed with a ton of teams last year. You went into that, obviously with a lot of teams, other than maybe the last game of the season, you went in chalking up a W. You just looked at the schedule and you wrote a W next to the team. That's how bad the team was last year. But you throw in a guy heck, even Tyrod Taylor at the beginning of the year kept them competitive. They obviously went down and struggled in that game that Baker took over, and they won. But, again, Baker makes the team competitive, and that's that's the edge they've been looking for. The Houston Texans going to the struggling Jacksonville Jaguars. I say struggling, they're 3-3, but the past 2 weeks they've been blown out. Just not even close. Granted, one was to the Kansas City Chiefs, but they lost to the Dallas Cowboys big yesterday too. And Jalen Ramsey asked him after the game what was going on, and he had a simple answer. Usually the very bolsterous Jalen Ramsey, he said, "I don't know," and that's it. No other words. So Jacksonville is struggling, and they're going up against a Texans team who has worked their way back to 500. Give me the Texans in this game. Unless they figure something out, the Jacksonville Jaguars figure something out, I think they're hurting missing Leonard Fournette. And I think the Houston Texans come out of Jacksonville with a hard-fought win. It's gonna be low scoring, and it's gonna be close. But give me the Texans in a thriller in Jacksonville.
Gotta be honest with you, I'm going Jacksonville just because I was gonna pick the Texans and you picked them. I want to disagree with you on this just because it's gonna be interesting. But if the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to, Deion Sanders said they've lost their identity. They've lost their ground and pound defensive identity. If they're going to refine it, it's the perfect time. Everyone's tied for first except the Colts in the division, I'm pretty sure. And then it's an in-division race. If they win this, if they win it by a decent amount, it pushes them ahead. It propels them into first. And if they're going to find their identity, if they're going to refine it or redefine it, it has to be in this game. And I like the Texans. I want them to win, but I think the Jags find their identity in this game and it propels them in the first place.
The New Orleans Saints traveling to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. That's going to be a big game. Both teams winning 4 games. The Saints only lost 1 with the bye week already, and the Ravens have lost 2. New Orleans is coming off of having Drew Brees be the all-time passing leader, and they're going up against a very talented Baltimore Ravens team. I don't know what it is that's telling me, but I like the Saints in this game. I like that. I think that they have so many playmakers. Michael Thomas is playing at an absolutely unbelievable level so far at the beginning of this season. Alvin Kamara is playing at an unbelievable level. Mark Ingram's back. There's just so many different weapons around. I think this is a very close game. I think Baltimore has a very good shot to win this game at home. But I like the offensive edge that New Orleans brings to the table. And I think their defense does just enough to win a shootout at home or on the road against the Ravens.
Okay, I have to say, the Saints are oddly ranked 17th in the league right now. Their defense is ranked 9th. The Ravens do have an edge on them in every single category in the rankings. But I would say the Saints just remind me of the Warriors offensively, the Golden State Warriors in the NBA. Because if they have one piece, if Drew Brees is having a down game, Mark Ingram's back. Him and Kamara will take the load off. If Michael Thomas is having a down game, it's the same situation. Or if one of the running backs are having a down game, Michael Thomas steps up. So I think you can't really hone in to one player and, just to slow down their offense in that way. But I see New Orleans winning this game just because they're the best offense, in my opinion, that Baltimore's faced this year, which might be why their defense is ranked second.
The Los Angeles Rams going up against the San Francisco 49ers. The undefeated Los Angeles Rams going up against the 1-4 49ers. I said this last week, and I stand by it wholeheartedly. For one, I will never trust a 49ers team led by C.J. Beathard, the quarterback out of Iowa. And plus, the Rams are just playing at an elite level right now. It's not really an away game much for the Rams. They're just going to Santa Clara, which is not far, especially compared to other NFL standards. So give me the Rams in a blowout against the San Francisco 49ers, although Richard Sherman's playing at an elite level right now in San Francisco's secondary.
I think it could be close just because it's in division. But again, the Rams are, again, in my opinion, the most talented team all around. Special teams, offense, defense, and the whole NFL. And I don't think it's even close. So I expect it to be a blowout, but I also think that it could potentially be a closer game just because the teams usually play each other really tight, being an in-division rivalry.
The Dallas Cowboys traveling to Washington to take on the Redskins in Landover, Maryland at FedEx Field. So the Cowboys just came off of a big win. Actually, both teams just came off of big wins this past week. Redskins beating the Carolina Panthers and the Dallas Cowboys taking out the Jacksonville Jaguars at home. The Redskins get a second straight home game at FedEx Field against the Dallas Cowboys in-division matchup. It's always going to be a fun time. However, I like the momentum that the Cowboys are doing right now. I think the Cowboys are in a good position to kind of pull away in the NFC East. Give me Dallas in a close game in Landover.
Yeah, this is just another game I have to agree with you on. Adrian Peterson's going to be out. Might be out for a little bit. Josh Doxson's been hurt. The offensive line's been a little shaken for Washington, and the Cowboys finally have put it together offensively. I know earlier in the year we couldn't buy into Cole Beasley being the top receiver. He had 2 touchdowns this week against a good Jaguars defense. So they have momentum, and their defense is actually starting to take form as well. So I have to give it to the Cowboys, as much as I hate to say that.
Cincinnati going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. If you are the rest of the AFC North or the AFC West, you are looking to this game and circling it 42 times on your schedule because this is such a huge game to shape both divisions. The Cincinnati Bengals just coming off of a loss last week to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're traveling to Kansas City to Arrowhead, one of the hardest stadiums in all of football to play against. Now, at the same time, Kansas City Chiefs, they're coming off of their first loss of the season to the New England Patriots in Foxborough. Two huge teams coming off of losses, and they're going to meet. However, I like Kansas City in this game by more than a touchdown. And this is the one and only reason I like them at home against this Cincinnati Bengals team who got exposed a little bit last week. Give me the Chiefs in a surprising little bit of a dominant game in Arrowhead.
I will say, would the Chiefs have lost last week if they didn't have to travel all the way across country, or at least from the Midwest to the East Coast? They only lost by 3 points, and my high school football coach would always say to beat a team away, you have to be 2 touchdowns better than them. And by that logic, I wasn't a fan of that saying, but if that logic's true, then the Chiefs are still about 10 points better than the Patriots. I think the Chiefs are the second best team in football right now, second to the Rams still. And I have to say, like you said, playing in Kansas City is difficult. I think it could be a really high scoring game again, but I have to give the edge to the Chiefs just because they have so much going offensively, and Kareem Hunt only had 10 rushes last night as well. So
the New York Giants traveling to Atlanta, a game that a lot of people thought would be a better game at this point. The Giants sitting at 1-5 and the Falcons sitting at 2-4. New York will be traveling to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. I will say this. The Falcons, every time I've said I wanted them to that I think they step up on the offensive side of the ball, they haven't done it this year. Whatever reason, Julio's just not getting as involved as you would think. Calvin Ridley's kind of came out as a dominant number 2 receiver. Devontae Freeman's just starting to get back. I think the Falcons definitely have, if they can get their team running to the full potential they can, they have the potential. They just haven't done it so far. And at least with the Giants, they're staying close. They're staying competitive in games. The Falcons have been blown out a few times the past little bit. Give me the Giants in a Monday night shocker on the road against a division rival a conference rival, and the Falcons seem to be searching a little bit more after this game.
Yeah, just looking at the rankings again, Atlanta's got one of the top offenses in the league, but they have the second to worst defense in the whole league. And the reason the Giants have been struggling, I think, is because they have Saquon Barkley, Odell, but Eli's been struggling. Their offense hasn't been able to get in a rhythm that they should be. How else? What better way to get into a rhythm than playing against the worst defense in the NFL? There's not. You're going to be able to do what you want and get momentum in the process. And I think this is a momentum game for the Giants that they're able to carry through the next couple games. So give me New York.
Well, there you have it, our game-by-game predictions for Week 7 in the National Football League. So moving on, I want to go to college football, NCAA football, and talk about some of the bigger games from the past week. Starting off with the number 1 team, Alabama. Of course, it's Alabama's world and we're all living in it. Tua Tagovailoa gets hurt in the second half towards the beginning of the third quarter, and Jalen Hurts comes in. Alabama still beats Missouri 39-10. And keep in mind, Tagovailoa came in with about 10 to 9 minutes left in the third quarter. He still went 12 of 22 for 265 yards and 3 touchdowns. If they have any kind of effort from that and Tagovailoa for the rest of the season, I don't know if a team in the nation is going to stop Alabama. Next, number 2, Georgia. They finally go down for the first time since the national championship. The LSU Tigers beat them in Baton Rouge, 36-16 in a thriller. LSU really dominated the game from the beginning. It wasn't even close. Ohio State, number 3, at only leading the Minnesota Golden Gophers by 3 at halftime. They pull away, win 30-14. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish win a close game against Pitt, a lot closer than a lot of Notre Dame fans would have obviously liked, but they win 19-14 in South Bend. A big upset, Iowa State Cyclones take out the West Virginia Mountaineers 30-14 in Ames. Again, a game that I thought could happen because it is in Ames. Iowa State, I thought could be a better team than they were this year. The Oregon Ducks knocked off the Washington Huskies 30-27. Washington will drop out of the top 10, and Oregon will move up in the rankings once again. Michigan State getting another upset, beating the Penn State Nittany Lions 21-17 in Happy Valley. So a huge win there for Michigan State. Texas continues to roll over Baylor. UCF wins an absolute thriller, just a classic against the Memphis Tigers, who seem to always give them trouble in the year. 6-0 now, the longest active winning streak in the nation. Michigan won the College Game Day Game of the Week, beating the Wisconsin Badgers 38-13 in the Big House. Florida survives against Vanderbilt. UVA knocks off Miami, big win in the ACC. USC ends Colorado's undefeated bid, wins 31-20 at home. Texas A&M barely knocks off South Carolina in Columbia. And lastly, the Tennessee Volunteers knock off the Auburn Tigers at 21 ranked. Auburn will drop out of the rankings, I'm sure. And Tennessee, look at that. They're gaining traction right now, except they got to play Alabama this week. So enjoy the win. Celebrate it while you got it. this is going to be a little bit rough in the upcoming weeks against the Crimson Tide. So I want to talk about Week 8. Something again, a little bit of a college football predictions as well. I want to start off with, this is a game that I'm surprised it honestly is a noon kickoff, because I thought this game was going to be so much bigger. The Michigan Wolverines, number 6 in the nation, Michigan Wolverines, traveling to East Lansing to take on number 24, Michigan State Spartans. So, Isaiah, who do you have winning in East Lansing against the Spartans and the Wolverines?
Dude, yeah, I have to go with the Wolverines, the Michigan Wolverines, just because they played Wisconsin last week and won by 25. We're talking about, a 15-ranked Wisconsin team, and I know that Michigan State has been playing up to their opponents all season, and they've had a couple upsets as well, big upsets. But I don't know, I'm kind of buying into these Harbaugh Wolverines finally after a few years there. Their defense is just playing phenomenal, and their offense is kind of stepping up as well. So yeah, I'm buying into Harbaugh probably more than I should, but give me the Wolverines.
I don't think that Michigan makes the college football playoff by any means this year. I do think they get beat by Ohio State at the end of the year, but I do like what Michigan's doing right now, and I think they do get a statement win against the Spartans. I think it's pretty handily as well on the road, so give me the Wolverines. Oklahoma traveling to TCU, a Big 12 matchup. Although Oklahoma has lost one game so far this year, but give me the Sooners. I think TCU's been struggling this year. They're not what a lot of people expected them to be, especially ever since the Texas game. They've kind of sputtered a little bit. Give me the Sooners to win a big one against TCU.
Yeah, give me Oklahoma as well. I mean, we're not seeing those, conference games where the final score is 67-70 anymore, which makes me think the Big 12 is kind of shifting a little bit. But at the same time, I have to go with Oklahoma. I think they may be the most high-power offense in the conference right now, and they got a little defense mixed in too. And TCU's been struggling, so I got to go with Oklahoma.
SEC matchup: the Auburn Tigers taking on the Ole Miss Rebels. Auburn sputtering. They started off so well. They lose their first game of the season to the Washington Huskies. They go on a tear, win 4 straight, and then they've dropped 2 straight. So look like they're sputtering a little bit. Their quarterback, Jarrett Stidham, has been struggling. Again, Ole Miss, we know they can put points up on the board. They're 5-2 right now, and honestly flying under the radar. So give me the Rebels to send Auburn to 500 in Oxford.
Yeah, give me Ole Miss as well. They've been playing actually pretty well this year. I've actually been surprised with just how efficient they've been. They have one, I think, a receiver. I forget what his name is, but he's been dominant at times. I would say maybe the best receiver in the nation. And yeah, they're just an all-around talented team. So give me Ole Miss.
UVA going up against Duke. Duke was just ranked not too long ago before a loss to Virginia Tech in Durham. They get UVA in Durham as well. UVA has been a very surprise team in the ACC, if I'm being completely honest. Knocking off Miami last week. Their quarterback Bryce Perkins has been playing phenomenal so far. Give me the Cavaliers to knock off the Blue Devils in Durham this week.
Yeah, once again, I hate disagreeing with you so much. I hate agreeing with you so much, but I have to go with UVA as well. They've been super surprising. They've been hanging in there with the best of teams they played against. Knocked off Miami last week, number 16 Miami. I think it's a testament to their coaching and just the passion and grit that their players are playing with. But yeah, if they knocked off Miami, they're riding high. They're not going to fall to Duke unless they underestimate them, which is possible.
Probably the biggest game in the ACC this week, the North Carolina State Wolfpack taking on the Clemson Tigers, both undefeated, as my co-host does have to go to a class, unfortunately, but don't worry, I'll still be here for a little bit of time. So the Wolfpack will be taking on the Clemson Tigers at Clemson. I think that's going to be the edge that ultimately gets the Tigers the win here. The Clemson Tigers have not, really their quarterback has been hurt a little bit at times, but I like the Tigers to win at home against a tough NC State team led by Dave Doeren, and give me the Tigers to win and continue their undefeated season. Penn State looking for a bounce-back game to take on the Indiana Hoosiers. I think Penn State wins this game. McSorley separates himself and puts Penn State over the top, beating Indiana pretty handily on the road. The Tennessee Volunteers and the Alabama Crimson Tide. I think I've said this before. I said this at the beginning of the show. It's Alabama's world, and we're living in it. Alabama. I'm sitting here wearing a Tennessee sweatshirt. But Alabama wins by over 30 in this game, especially even in Neyland. But I do think that Alabama is, without a doubt, the best team in the nation. It's not even really close. Their quarterback play is just phenomenal, and they do get the win handily against a better than they were before Tennessee Volunteers team. Big 12 football, the Kansas Jayhawks taking on the Texas Tech Red Raiders in Lubbock. I like Texas Tech at home against a Kansas team. It's kind of hard to ever pick Kansas for anything, and it's not basketball, so give me the Red Raiders. UCF looking to continue their undefeated season against East Carolina. UCF wins this game. This is the type of game that undefeated teams tend to overlook, and it could be a trap game. With that being said, I like the Knights to beat the Buccaneers on the road this week. Ohio State and Purdue. Ohio State struggled again last week against the Minnesota Golden Gophers, only having a 3-point lead at halftime. I like them to beat the Boilermakers by a good bit this time. The Oregon Ducks traveling to Washington State. College game day is going to be in Pullman, Washington for the first time in its history. Washington State will be rocking it for this game against Oregon. I think they get a win this game too. It's going to be a statement win, show in the Pac-12 that they do mean business, and they're going to beat the Ducks in this game at home. Vanderbilt and Kentucky. Vanderbilt's been competitive in SEC games so far. Led Florida for a long time this past Saturday. Couldn't quite get it done towards the end. Florida did pull away, win by 10. So, with that being said, Kentucky has only lost one game so far. And I believe it was, if I'm not off the top of my head, I believe it was to Texas A&M. I like the Wildcats and Benny Snell Jr. to get back involved, and they beat Vanderbilt in a shootout at home. USC and Utah, Pac-12 football again. USC just coming off of a win to knock off Colorado for their first loss of the season, and Utah always seems to be sneakily pretty good. They're 4-2 right now, but I think that USC and JT Daniels, their young quarterback, is starting to find his footing in the Trojans' offense. Give me USC against Utah. That's going to do it for our week-by-week predictions in the NCAA. Now moving on to the MLB, and really it's time to talk about the postseason. This is something that has been overlooked a lot in recent. It doesn't get as much coverage as it probably should on social media and on network television because of football coming back. Basketball is going to be coming back. So it really has been a very close postseason so far. I've only seen a couple of sweeps in the wild card round. Of course, we talked about this. The Colorado Rockies knocked off the Chicago Cubs, and the New York Yankees beat the Oakland Athletics. Going into the divisional series, though, the Milwaukee Brewers swept the Colorado Rockies in 3 games. The Los Angeles Dodgers beat the Atlanta Braves in 4 games. And on the American League side, the Boston Red Sox beat the New York Yankees in 4 games, and the Houston Astros swept the Cleveland Indians in 3 games as well. Now we are in the ALCS and NLCS, respectively. The Brewers and Dodgers are off to a 1-1 start to the series. Of course, the ALCS and NLCS, it is to a best of 7. So the Brewers and Dodgers are 1-1, and in the ALCS, the Astros and Red Sox are also 1-1 in the series, so we're looking to have a very successful championship series on both sides. I want to talk about MVP predictions, and that goes for both leagues. I know that I said this before, but here is my honest pick. I thought when I first did this that it was going to be Javi Baez from the Chicago Cubs in the NLC and the NL. However, seeing what he's doing now and seeing what his team is doing now, in the National League, give me Christian Yelich as the MVP from the Milwaukee Brewers, a guy who was pretty good on a Miami Marlins team a few years ago and really was one of the main bright spots along with Giancarlo Stanton on that team. So give me Christian Yelich to win the MVP in the NL. Now in the American League, that's going to be a different talk. There's so many different playmakers in the American League, and I can think of a few off the top of my head. But the main guy that I think will win the MVP this year, and I think he really deserves it because of the impact that he had with his team, is probably going to be Mookie Betts. I really think that Mookie Betts has really separated himself as one of the premier players in the MLB, and he's only going to improve from here on out. He's had postseason success so far. He's had regular season success so far. Give me Mookie Betts to win the American League MVP. Cy Young Awards in the NL, I'm going to go with the safe pick. I'm going to say Clayton Kershaw, even though he has been hurt in the past little bit. In the AL, I like Chris Sale so far this year. I think Boston sweeps the MVP and the Cy Young Awards for players. Well, that's going to do it here on another edition of Hot Takes with Holmes here from Radio Free Radford. If you like what you heard today, then be sure to like our Facebook page where we update all that goes on here on the broadcast. We're also on YouTube where all of our broadcasts are uploaded to. Find us at Hot Takes with Holmes on both of the sites. Again, if you like what you hear on Radio Free Radford, please follow, like, subscribe to their social media pages. Instagram, Radio Free Radford, all lowercase. Twitter, at Radio Free Raddy. And Facebook, Radio Free Radford. Be sure to follow, like, subscribe again to those social media pages to find out more about the great content that goes on this station daily and every single week. You won't regret it. So, for my co-host Isaiah Addair, I'm Blake Holmes, and we'll see you next week on Hot Takes with Holmes here on Radio Free Radford.